Hello everyone! Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk, the podcast presented by the Courier. This is our last episode of the semester. Sadly, fall semester 2023 is literally done next week. So yeah, we wanted to come on here with our guest.
Hi, I'm back again. I'm Sam, I'm the editor-in-chief for the Courier. And today we're talking about kind of the semester at large. We've got a handful of stories and authors picked that we're going to highlight, starting first with our editorial.
Yeah, and and I'm David. I'm the managing editor and the co-host here at the Courier.
I forgot to introduce
you stole
myself.
My thunder. Yeah. No, it's fine.
I even forgot to introduce myself.
Yeah, that's all. That's all you need to know. So we're going to talk about the editorial that came out earlier in the semester, which was about the absence of a textbook. What would you call it? Like fee or cost?
Just the waiver.
The waiver.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, that's the word. We're going to be talking about how that disappeared all of a sudden, despite being there for quite a few years, actually. Like, I think 2 years from at that point. So we're going to talk about the reporting process about that, how we came up with the story, and just like talk about what it's like to write an editorial, because I think there's so many ways you could go about it. And so just diving more into our approach and like why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm. Of all the stuff that we wrote this semester, I think the editorial of being about the textbook credit, I feel like that was probably the biggest issue on all of campus like this semester. A lot of people were shocked to find out. Some people didn't even know we had that, so a lot of people did find out once it was gone.
Yeah.
So I think it was a perfect like topic to write the editorial on. Because it affected everybody, like not just...
Yeah, it's not just like the people in the newsroom. It's
Exactly.
like students at PCC in general. You know,
Right.
having to pay for an expensive textbook means the difference between taking a course and dropping it because you can't afford it, maybe. So.
And it's very rare for like the whole campus to agree on something. Well, maybe not agree, but just be aware of like a similar problem that's affecting everyone, because, you know, with the community college, everything's so disconnected. People are doing their own pathways, going through their general education or whichever path they might be going on. So, yeah, I think it's just a really wide-ranging event for us to go over. And, you know, it was kind of a unique thing for us to do because we don't often do editorials. It's very rare for us to agree on, like,
Want
one
to do it
thing.
more.
So, you know, it was great to, you know, agree on that everyone needs more money.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess like a lot of students to kind of, because I want to know who like, or the reporting process on it. I also worked on like a news story that came out around the same time of the textbook cost. It was me, Seamus, who's the news editor, and Luca, who's a staff writer. And the three of us worked together to find out like what the deal was. Essentially, students get like a PIN or a code emailed to them, and then you're able to log onto like your student portal.
Yeah.
And whatever costs you have for textbooks can be waived at, I think it's like $200 that
Yes,
they gave you.
yeah, it was 200.
And so they promoted the hell out of that. They really did. When it was like in use, I remember like I got those emails every day, like use this free money, like use it. And then the start of semester happened. People went on to try and use their free money, and it wasn't working.
Yeah, and with the textbook waiver, it wasn't even just for textbooks themselves exactly. Like, you could also use it for the bookstore credit, so you could buy whether it be like, I think they have backpacks or like
like
there was a
school
limit,
supplies.
there was a limit to what you could get, but like people would buy headphones or like anything that would like be helpful and, you know, going through college.
Yeah, calculators, like
That $200 was like really useful considering like what you could get from it.
Yeah,
and exactly like what you mentioned was just they communicated about it so much to where like either, unless you just didn't look at like your school email, which I understand a lot of people don't, or you didn't look at Lansing Point frequently, you would know that there was a textbook credit. And I was surprised that a lot of people from like either the news story we did or just even the editorial like knew about it. Just because I guess like for me, I wouldn't have thought that, because I do think that like a lot of people miss out on a lot of the news that happens on campus. I mean, we like miss out on like events and be like, oh, like we could have covered that. But yeah. So I think what you were saying, like how was like the reporting process about like the editorial?
I think ultimately the most important thing was making sure that we got a wide variety of people who it affects. So we have multiple... this specific editorial is sourced entirely by the Courier staff.
Yeah.
And so we have staff writers, editors, people who knew about it and just were kind of question mark on like why it was gone. People who are just starting here at PCC that didn't even know that it was a thing. And there's one quote in it from Machu, who's a staff writer. He said he mentioned that he went to community college because it's a cheaper alternative to university, and so like a textbook credit is really important to help waiver that cost, so that way you still have money to survive, I guess. Like
I mean, a lot of students on campus, like, they really count on this money to help them get the classes that they need. Sometimes it's part of your requirement to take a course, whether you like it or not. And if all that's left is a course that's charging you $200 for a textbook, you have no choice but to freaking get it, like, just to make your requirements. And so a lot of students, I think, counted on that. But the thing that, like, made it editorial worthy, I feel like, was that there was no information about why it was stopped or when it was going to be stopped. Because it was here throughout the summer. And then fall came and it was just like silence, and people were like, wait, I can't use my money anymore,
And at first it seemed as though it was a part of the whole revamping of the student portal. Lancer Point is what we refer to for our student portal. It's what it's called. But at the start of the semester, it got revamped and it had this new layout, so a lot of people were trying to get used to that layout. And then after a while, after like the first few weeks, they're like trying to look for like the free textbook cost, but because before there was like I think a whole section for it.
It was like a tab. So it would be on the main page before they revamped it, but it would be like a tab towards the bottom.
Yeah, so I think at first the expectation or the thought was like, oh, I just like they must have like just moved it somewhere, and then like after like people started scouring, it was that realization of, oh wait, it's nothing, and like like wait, what happened to it? It really just gone.
And it was like a week after that the news story came out that we published about them not informing students that there would be no voucher. A week later the editorial came out. How was like, I guess everyone was pretty upset about it, like general like feeling.
I think we had a unique perspective because being in the journalism program, there's not very many courses that require a textbook. But I mean, it's not like these are the only classes we're taking at PCC, so like obviously we're all feeling the effects of not having that money available to us. So I would say that like even the people who commented that like didn't even know that it was a thing were kind of like, well, what the hell, where is my money? Or like why didn't I get that at any point?
Yeah, and there's also a decent amount of people in the newsroom who aren't necessarily pursuing a career in journalism, or they're more looking at a communications career just as an overall thing, or sometimes people even take the class just to take it. Like we've had a lot of students who just like taken it for like a semester and then they were gone the next semester. So it does impact. We at least saw that within our own newsroom, and then through the news story itself, we like talked to because I believe there was student input in that news story.
Oh yeah, there was student input. People were pretty upset. I remember one of the students. She was like, I can't take the classes I wanted to. Like I literally had to drop half my schedule because I can't afford it, and like this money was supposed to help me register for my classes.
Yeah.
So it's those situations that I think are like, we start to question, like, okay, it's fine you took it. I understand, like, a lot of the funding did come from the COVID, like, as a result of COVID, the school got a lot of funding from that, and it was cut because the, emergency funding is kind of, like, done now that COVID has passed. Yeah. But it still makes you, like, well, you at least said something.
Yeah, I think it's important for, like, the school body to be communicative with its... with the students, because ultimately we are the people that are funding, we are giving the school our money. And so if you don't tell us these things, we expect a certain, students will come to expect having that $200, and then it's taken away for no reason.
Right.
Not communicated at all. Also, like, they redesigned Lancer Point, and the textbook thing is still there. It still says you can get your textbook credit to this day. Which is really funny because it's been gone for months now.
Yeah, because if you click the link, it takes you to nothing, I think.
It's like a dead link now, just as with the Hey There or whatever.
Yeah, and then also it's important to note that to this day, months after the story came out, that we got no word of it whatsoever. Like there's still it still hasn't anything about it. It was almost like it never happened.
Our stories are probably the most people would know about it. Like it's like the most they've heard about it.
Yeah, that was my next question is like, have you or like Nathan being the advisor like gotten any emails or like response like, hey, like this is why we didn't say anything?
No, nothing really.
Right?
Nothing from the school board or anything like that talking about it.
Interesting.
I mean, with like institution, public institutions, it's hard to really get a straight answer. Not because their communication, but more or less just getting to them first and foremost. So to get to them about something like textbook credit, where there's not necessarily a clear answer as to why, and there's with something like that, there's usually someone higher up that's in charge of that, because there's going to be someone who's in charge of the money, and it's not like a professor here is going to know like exactly what happened, or like even like someone in like the board of trustees perhaps wouldn't know like exactly like the whole situation. So there is that angle to it, and we do understand that there may not be an easy answer, and it might be as simple as we just stopped.
Yeah.
But, it is just the fact that there was no word whatsoever.
Yeah. Even, like, other faculty, like professors and stuff, I think could have maybe done a little bit. I was lucky enough to get my classes all zero cost textbooks. Yeah. Even then, the website is a little tricky where, like, you can easily miss if your classes...
That's what I think.
Yeah. It's, like, really tiny print, and it's, like, no cost, but, like, someone who's not tech savvy or, like, doesn't really, like... do a lot of that, can probably miss it. I know I've missed it because I
definitely have.
Yeah, I've missed it. But I think that they could have done maybe a little bit more on like at least guiding students to like, oh, if you have any questions, you might want to talk to this department.
Yeah.
Or giving resources of like, I know you don't have the textbook voucher anymore, but go to this office with your questions. Like they might be able to help you better. When I talked to the faculty, like no one wanted to answer. Everyone was very not in the mood to answer, so that was a little upsetting to me because I was like, what if I was a student just coming to you for help? Would you still tell me like I don't have anything to say about that?
Yeah,
so that's kind of shady. But
and I think speaking to that, I think that's also like part of the reason why I thought it was important that we have Nathan, our advisor, have a comment on there too, because he's on the other side of it where he is a professor who teaches here at PCC, not just advising the newspaper class, but teaching intro to journalism. And, so he has these choices, available to him. Yeah. So getting his perspective alongside all of ours is like a nice contrast that I felt was really important.
Yeah.
Couldn't have.
Which is another thing with editorial is that it's going in the news section. It was in the news section, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's going in the news section, and yet we don't want it to feel as too opinion-y as possible, or like as if we're just like ranting. Because I have read like back on like Courier stories, not to like disrespect like any previous staff writers, but just sometimes it can get a little personal with editorials, especially even in legacy publications. It could get like this said X person said this, and then this is the publication like fighting back fighting back on what was said. So for us, it was important to just voice strictly the student perspective, not necessarily the journalist perspective, because we want to make sure that people know how it's affecting students and how important it is to communicate properly. Really, that's really just the core issue of everything that happened with this issue, at least.
I agree. I think that, like I said earlier, the COVID funding, COVID's not going to be here forever. So eventually funding for not only our school, but schools everywhere was going to stop at some point. And I think I expected that. And I think a lot of people knew that was going to come at some point. But at the very least, you should be communicating with your students. You promoted the hell out of it. At least tell us when it's going to be gone.
I think the important thing is that, you're never going to have a situation where everyone's okay with the fact that it's gone.
Right.
But you can at least tell people that, hey, we are cutting this off, we are running, we don't have the funds to keep it up. And, sure, they may be unhappy, but at least they have a reason, a tangible explanation, why it's happening. It doesn't just disappear. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then I don't know if we've already said it before, but the textbook waiver itself was a result of COVID, and it was supposed to help, I believe, students in the fall or spring 2021 semester. That's around the time where it became a thing. So, it was a big help back then, but to have that extra resource, going into spring or fall 2022 or fall 2023, where COVID might not be a major issue as it was like a few years ago. There's still other issues that people have, whereas paying for the classes. There's been so many times where people I've at least from like people who I know on campus that I've talked to, where they either couldn't take a class because it cost too much money just for the application fee, or they couldn't take it because their professor has a textbook required that costs like $300.
Yeah.
And through the bookstore, they don't offer alternatives, and it varies from professor to professor. I'm sure some are probably more cooperative with where you get your textbooks, but they do make it seem as though you have to get it from the textbook store or through like the library, and that's the only place you could get it, whereas there are also options online, and you could also buy used textbooks on Amazon if need be at cheap prices too.
Mm-hmm.
So just communicating more pathways for students to because it's not a financial decision as it is an academic. It's academic. It affects directly people's classes and whether or not they're going to be able to transfer on time.
Yeah, it's like, especially if it comes to like a GE where like you need to take that course at some point before you finish up here, and if you can't do it because of these textbooks, that sets them back, so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most likely if you are taking a GE, then you will have to at least one way or another come across a class that requires a textbook. I know for myself, I had to get a textbook for my assembly class, and that easily costed like $150 or like $300, and the textbook waiver, it helped to like cover for that, just because I could like then not have to worry about using a textbook that I'm only gonna use for a semester. And for some people, they might not even use it for that long a time for classes that either last 6 weeks or they're doing it over the summer or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I've used the voucher twice or 3 times already at PCC.
Yeah.
My stats book was like $150. I just used a voucher on it, and it was fine.
Yeah.
Me too. I did that last in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
For stats or
yeah, for stats.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm looking at it right now, but Nathan did say like it is harder for professors who have like math or calculus courses to like kind of go around that. But I think he also asked, I'm gonna quote this from an article, he said, "Is this absolutely essential to the course?" Like professors should be asking themselves, and I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. I think like that quote was the reason I included it is not just is it like really a really strong point of like also professors taking into account like what they're teaching and what is necessarily required of the students.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that like there's a conversation that should be had of like, based on what a professor is teaching, does a student really need a textbook? If it's a history course, you may not need to have a paid physical textbook, but if it's math, you need something tangible to show you what to do and learn from that. So it's like a case by case thing. Not every class fits in the same mold of like whether it needs a textbook or doesn't.
Yeah, and to add on to that, like yes, it does. Because STEM professors, they do require, or they need to have those resources, whereas like assigning textbooks for students and like there's more going into a STEM class than there is going to say an English class or like a communications class. But while that does ask more from the professors themselves, it asks even more from the students who are taking not only one STEM class but 2 or 3, or if their whole major is related to STEM, whether that be in the sciences or in the mathematics field. They're probably like paying for so many textbooks, at least in a semester,
right?
Yeah,
and then let alone for like 2 or 3 years that they are at PCC,
right?
So those prices could skyrocket, and without that like cushion of the textbook cost, which mind you would probably only apply to like one textbook, but even then like it's better than nothing,
right?
So it's just important to like make sure that students are getting the most help they can, and if the money was available before, then like why not now? And it's a public institution. It's not like a private institution where there's different things going on, or the leadership doesn't agree with using that money for students anymore. There could be that, and like we said before, we are paying them back in a lot of more ways than one.
Yes.
No, yeah, that's true. I wanted to also like kind of touch, you mentioned earlier like that there's so many ways to write an editorial for a paper, so I what was your approach, and like how did you think like envision it, I guess, coming out?
I guess like once I had everything from the staff, I knew that I knew even like hearing just hearing things from them, what I wanted to portray and paint kind of our view as, where obviously, we do a service for the institution, we report on their news, so we don't want to slam it per se, but we do want to be critical to make it clear and known where we stand. So ultimately the goal was to really illustrate that, and just my writing came secondary to the stories and like the examples that people were giving me in order to portray it as like a whole picture.
Yeah, I also think the way we conducted the editorial itself was unique. I'm not exactly sure like all the ways you go about an editorial. I'm sure there's different ways of like either emailing specifics like journalists as like, what they think, but for us it was cool to where you were up like on like in the front and pretty much just like holding court, like asking people like, okay, raise your hand if you ever had a problem with the textbook cost, or like if you have something you feel about it, and then just people like speaking from the heart really, and then making sure you get the quotes that not only work towards the story but also reflect like our overarching opinion, to where it's not just different like examples or unique situations, but rather a common problem that affects everyone, like one way or another. So I think that was a unique way of how we went about the editorial, and I think I'm not sure how editorials have been done before, because like we said before, we don't get to do them often. But I do like that. A lot. Yeah, I like the way we went about it.
I think like the way it kind of culminated and how the end product turned out was like really good, and I think it makes like a really strong point that's representative of the whole staff, which is the most important part.
Yeah, even if it is quote heavy, which admittedly the editorial it has a lot of quotes, I think it's important to just hear directly from like our voices, and not necessarily just simple sentences on like why this affects people, because people could draw their own conclusions as to like how the removal of a textbook waiver affects someone financially, or their plans on transferring. But to hear like personal like examples and like hear real world like reasons as just like experiences that people have had.
I think that was like the most important thing, is like getting those anecdotes and like making sure that I can paraphrase anything that someone tells me, but it means so it's so much more powerful if like the quote is directly from the person. And like I think in the future maybe we focus less on that, but I think for this like it helps build the case.
I know it was obviously aimed to like speak on behalf of the Courier like newsroom, but what makes this cool is like it really does speak on behalf of a lot of the campus as well, not only us, but like it does kind of like mirror the voices of the ones that we heard in the news article when we interviewed students. Like they felt the same, a lot of people felt the same as we did in the newsroom. So I thought that was also, because editorials are like newsroom like exclusive, but like it really does show what a lot of the campus was, or how they reacted to the funding being gone. So I really enjoyed reading it. It was good. I'm glad that we did it on this, because this topic was really the talk of the town for a minute when the semester started.
I think like during our budget meetings, there's like certain articles where like we have like a really big discussion, and it's like it's easy to feel like, oh, this could be an editorial and this could, but like it's like almost a skill to figure out which ones really need to be blown up and like talked about on such a scale like we did with this one.
Which is why I don't think we do editorials very often, because we only do it when it's necessary, or if it like is directly involving us, which hopefully is not the case for the future. But I mean, one way or another it probably will, whether we're here or not. But I think with editorials, they should be necessary ways in which we could directly talk to readers, not only through just a simple article published weekly, but something that allows us to share our voice the same way that we share our voices like on the podcast, but shares our voices to where like other people or other students in on the campus feel seen or feel heard with their grievances or concerns or what have you. So I think like moving forward, because we did have an editorial for this week, but we might push that back later, just because it is a matter of timing and finding like the relevant time of, you know, publishing an editorial, making sure it is relevant and it's a pressing matter, not just like something that, you know, is happening.
You know, like sounds interesting enough.
Yeah, or is happening like globally. Because like, we could easily talk like, we all agree on like different opinions, whether it be political or globally, but you know, it's not, what are we going to contribute that hasn't really been said, like on a national scale. So, you know, and to just focus and localize our stories is like really what
which is I think the most important thing is like it takes perspective from PCC. Like this is like our angle and like where we're reporting. So it makes it, you know, very, localized and I think different and unique. And also, what you said earlier, shout out to like you guys for putting it together right after the news story. It was like in the same week that it was published, so it was pretty cool.
Or the
week after.
Yeah, but soon after.
But it was like they were meant to like go together, like one after the other.
Because I think editorials sometimes also are tricky. Like you might spend a lot of time on it, like weeks developing it and then get it out. But I feel like this one was. The news story happened, and then that was already like a kind of weird, like, oh, interesting feedback that we got, and then the editorial came, which was pretty cool. But yeah, great story. I liked it a lot.
And the story kind of told itself in a way. I think it's a cliche to say, but there are some stories that just they happen naturally, whether or not they need your personal voice or your flourishing.
You may go in with like a preconceived notion of how you're going to lay out something, but I mean, ultimately, like your quotes and the anecdotes that you collect will like guide the coverage and like culminate in something almost entirely different.
Sounds like my spotlight page. Literally rewrote it like 4 times. But yeah,
I think job on that. I think this is a good closer for the editorial discussion. But seeing as though this is episode 10 and the last episode of the podcast, at least for this season, we're on season 2 already, which is wild to think.
One more season and
for when we're gone.
Whoever's listening to this after we're gone, y'all would be, you know, doing this. I mean, just saying. But
so we, you know, looking like back at least this semester, I think it'd be a whole other episode if we looked at, you know, the last 2 semesters. But you know, just talking briefly about the stories that went up this semester and what we felt was our best work that came out so far.
Yeah, from each section there was really good work that was put out this semester. A lot of the new staff writers, I think, found their area of like, this is what I'm good at. And we saw that. I saw that in Lifestyle. Like, it was really cool to read some of the stories that I did read. Even sports got, like, some love this semester.
That's just out of the ordinary for the Courier, and that's always good to see.
So, do you want to just, like, jump straight into, like, stories that we
so we'll just go down the sections. So, starting with news, the writer we want to really focus on is Sabrina Farouk. She's a staff writer, assistant video editor, a member of our social media team, and she's done fantastic work. Consistently. I mean, all of her news stories are fantastic. I mean, she's done things on green energy, the
campus politics.
I was thinking of the union. Sorry.
Union. Yes.
She's done stuff on the union fights that have been happening. All sorts of campus news, and she's really killed it. Just in covering everything.
And just so many news stories. Like, you know, you're doing, like, well if you're giving Seamus a run for his money. On news stories you're putting out. Because Seamus is... And that's another person, Seamus, our news editor, who also edits the podcast. He's just consistently dedicated to, like, what he does. But, Sabrina also is, like, you know, at least, like, second place when it comes to, like, that commitment. And from the get-go, because this is her only her first semester. But, you know,
even with the social media, I think she was kind of, like, the pioneer this semester.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dante Estrada, he's our lead social media team member, and I think her and him together really did such a great job with our social media pages, which you should follow, by the way, if you aren't already.
Instagram, X, all that.
Yeah.
But
TikTok. The other person from news that I wanted to point out was assistant news editor Ben. He's a phenomenal writer. He's done stuff on cadet programs, and he's also a fantastic photographer.
Really?
If this can happen, above our heads in editing, maybe Seamus can put the picture. But
right here,
right above the table. But he took a fantastic picture of an anti-war protest that happened
soon after the Hamas attack on October 7th.
It was a phenomenal picture. I mean, if I could give
so good
photos,
Renaissance painting.
It was just, he really like captured it. I was like, I mean, when Nathan like blew it up on the screen to like show everyone, give him a shout out. We're like, yo, that ish is awesome.
I mean,
so
it's
sick.
just it's well composed and everything.
It was
so
really good.
Great work for that picture. I mean, on top of his fantastic writing,
and he has great writing.
But moving on to features.
Features. Yes. So we have two writers here. Trina, she's the assistant assistant features editor. She really just kicked it out of the park.
We knew from the beginning she was going to be.
Even from her first feature story. She went to this poetry event held by the LAist in September. There was a grassroots style, not protest, but meeting that she went to in LA. Yeah. And she also covered the lunar eclipse, or was it? It
was the partial eclipse.
Partial eclipse.
Yeah, that was held at the PCC Observatory, which I didn't even know existed.
Before
that, but just really great stories though, and I love the way she tells the story straight and for what it is.
Yeah, and her details are she's so incredible with weaving in details for each and every story. So
she's also a great resource.
Yes,
for the newsroom if you need a name or an event, or you're like, hey, I need details on this, you can literally ask her and she'll be like, yep, here you go.
She's on it, and that's such a good skill to have, such an asset.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of our former features editor, Casey, who had...
Oh my god, she was
Casey was
always tendrils and everything. Yeah. Almost she had an idea for everything.
Dude, Casey's pitches on the budget every week were
they were fantastic.
And even first pitches that weren't in her section, she would be like, oh, I know a person that you can talk to. And it's just how
helping out.
The hell do you know all these people?
She was great. But great way to transition that into someone else.
So
really cool.
Our other staff writer we wanted to highlight is Laura. She's a member of the social media team. We wanted to focus on her feature writing. She wrote a great one on the dedication of the C building. It's now the Jack Scott building, who was a former superintendent president.
Yes. I believe a lawyer.
Yeah, he was originally a lawyer, and then he became superintendent president in the 70s or so.
He's just a very important figure in the Pasadena
he means a lot to
area.
the school and to the area.
So, but her story was very well done, and just going at the actual event and just capturing the energy of it, because I remember I wasn't there for the actual story, but I remember passing by and just seeing them. It was her and Seamus that were there together, but just seeing them together, really working on the story, asking anyone and everyone was just fantastic to see. And mind you, these are all new staff writers. So the fact that they're really coming in swinging is
that's
amazing.
Such a great thing to see.
Yeah.
Moving on to opinion, we've got another two writers to point out. We want to start with our sports editor, Laurent. He recently wrote a really fantastic story criticizing the Grammys and how their bias kind of skews the award season for music.
But also addressing that people don't understand how the Grammys work, and just weighing that against the Billboard way of review, because rating music in general, or just rating anything on a scale of this is the best, it's a fool's errand.
Yeah.
But he does make a great argument as to why it fails at what it does, and presenting ways in which it does work, and where people's misconceptions come from.
It's one of the most incredibly sourced opinion pieces I think I've read while I've been here at the Courier. I mean, it's just very thorough, and it covers every base, why people don't understand how long the Grammys have been doing it like this, and everything. He really just...
All his articles.
Yeah, he's a really good writer, in general. But
and social media.
Yes, his social media. Not a member of the team, but we're trying to push him into that.
Yeah.
The other writer we want to point out is David. He doesn't just sit here on the couch and talk. He also writes.
I do.
He wrote a very good piece about Kevin De Leon running for re-election in his district.
my district, by the way,
Yeah.
which is
which
is why I wrote the opinion piece.
Which is such a nice angle, is that David is actually a constituent in that area, so there's a natural perspective there that kind of lent itself into his writing, which again is like one of the best. I mean, I hardly ever have to edit when I read your stuff, but I mean, like, reading that was like, it was very good.
Oh, shucks.
I remember one time I wrote for, I think it was Opinion, and he was editing it, and then you had like a lifestyle story or something. I don't know. And then I was like, I don't really need to look at it that much. He's like, yeah, same with yours. I looked at it once and it's fine.
Yeah, it's mutual. But thank you. Yeah, that was very nice of you. Yeah, let's go on to.
So for lifestyle, our first writer is staff writer. He's actually assistant opinion editor now, Carlos. His work as like. He's definitely one of the writers who kind of found what he likes to do, and he just kills it every time. You know, he loves to do movie reviews, anything going on in the industry. I think my favorite story that he wrote was the one about the strikes.
That was really good.
He found students whose parents were striking with SAG-AFTRA and the WGA, which was like such an incredible angle to get, like to think that there are students here on campus who were affected by it.
Yeah, he's really, he has made, like, reading his work such a pleasure, especially, like, his movie reviews. I literally was never bored reading one of those. He was very, like, his attention to detail in his writing is incredible. He really, like, transports you into the movie, which is, like, you read a movie review and you're like, okay, yeah, I agree with that person, but, like, when you read his, it's like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I love it.
Yeah, because the best movie reviews are the ones that, like, you know, are critiquing the movie and reviewing it, but also, like, putting you like great details that immerse you in the same way that the movie does.
Right.
I think he does that really well, especially with his Dumb Money review.
Yeah, his Dumb Money one
favorite.
was probably the best.
I loved it. That was really fun to read.
The other writer we wanted to highlight for lifestyle is Odessa. She did a piece with LaRon about.
Odessa and LaRon together, yeah. They both did a lot of really
good
stuff.
They teamed up together a lot this semester, but the piece that we wanted to highlight was their Travis Scott concert story, where they compared and contrasted being on the floor and then versus being in the stands, which was like a really unique way to approach a concert story like that.
Yeah. I'd never really seen that, so it was cool.
Not even in like a legacy publication.
I mean, there's like hundreds of concert stories to read out there,
right?
But like you're not going to get one where you're actively kind of switching back and forth versus like what LaRon might have felt versus what she felt.
Yeah, and it was cool because like I don't think they planned on intentionally attending the concert together, but once they found like an angle that they could apply both their opinions was really cool. I enjoyed reading that. Also, shout out to his Camp Flogna piece review.
That one was also really
Loved
good.
That review so much. I did a day trip, like a music festival review over the summer, and like reading mine and then reading his, it was like really cool to like see that we both have like the same approach. So I'm not the only one here. That's good. But he did awesome on that. That was great. He was really in detail with that. So shout out to LaRon.
Yeah, both of them.
And then the final person we want to point out, this is for sports, Samuel Watson. He's
also a photographer.
He's a photographer. His photos are fantastic. I mean, he just has this way of capturing like the perfect moment for a sports game.
Yeah.
But his sports stories are also really good. They're straight to the point, but also like filled with details that like really push you, like make you feel like you were there watching the game, which is like kind of important. Like reading a sports game is like not the same as just being there. So like the fact that he can get that energy into his writing is really good.
And he seems to have fun, which is like the most important. Like I mentioned earlier, sports got some love this semester. I think from him specifically, a lot of the sports stories he wrote, we all felt like he really did care and like had fun and enjoyed writing these stories, which is good.
And we just kind of talked about this before we started, but there was like a couple weeks where he was just like bang bang bang, just like pumping them out.
Yeah, just back to back to back to back.
And it's so cool to see like our sports section so alive this semester. You know, coming off of last semester where we'd get like 1 or 2 sports stories every week,
and then the semester before, which was even
less than that, which was really sad. But you know.
Yeah, just a lot of great work overall, especially from new staff writers, especially who it's rare to have so many like great people like right from the get-go of fall semester, because most people do come in during the spring. I know like us two came in during last semester, but yeah, just to have that team already like and always growing, like having more people than last semester, I believe.
Yeah,
it feels like
definitely more people than last semester.
It feels like that. So yeah,
all the writers did great though. Every single person who wrote did a phenomenal job. I appreciated like seeing as much work put out every week as there was on our website. Like that was really cool to see every time. It was like
I think another part of it is that like the Courier is nothing without its editor team. So you guys were both, and not just you two, but everyone else who isn't in the room with us right now.
And you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And assistant editors.
So they are kind of the lifeblood of the Courier, and that you guys are like the safeguard against any potential mistakes, and making sure the information we put out is good and true. And so great work. Like just this whole semester catching things, making sure stories were.
You guys were awesome. I know it's like your first time in this role, right? This semester. So
it's only my second semester. It's like super.
So shout out to y'all. You guys were a great resource. Even for me as an editor, I was very sick, but I felt like I was really sick this semester. But I felt like I could go to you guys and like, hey, I am down bad, I need help, lots of stories, what do I do? And Sam was like, I got you, like every single time. So shout out to y'all for making it happen. I had fun this semester.
Yeah. Definitely. I think coming in I was a little like scared a little bit to see what would happen, but I think everything turned out in like a really good way, and we produced a lot of really good content this semester.
Yeah, we were able to contain the fire whenever we were able.
There were a lot of fires.
A lot of fires.
Never wildfires, only just small issues.
Yeah.
And so luckily we were able to clear those out. But yeah.
And shout out to Nathan this semester for working with us, being understanding.
And for grading all our work every week.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess with that being said, I look forward to spring semester, especially with most people coming back too.
Great. Actually, I would say our next podcast episode would be before the spring.
Oh. No.
Winter.
In the winter.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. No. Okay.
The winter episode
we'll try.
will be. We'll be attempted.
Well, there will be an attempt to make a winter session episode.
No promises, but hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. Also, a quick shout out to the podcast. This is season 2. Next spring will be season 3. For whoever's on it, I hope to be on it. Seamus, shout out to him for editing every single episode this semester. He did an awesome job. Really timely manner too. Like he was just
especially in moving it from audio only to giving a physical video.
Yeah,
Hi, you can see us now.
Yeah. So shout out to him. He really, really was like committed into making it happen for us. So I'm very thankful for all his hard work. Yeah. And hope to have more episodes than 10 episodes next season.
We'll try.
We'll see what happens.
We'll try. So I think it's a good place to end it. Thanks for joining with us once again. I think you're kind of like the honorary third co-host, but it is what it is. So
you made it to the end. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment.
Follow us on all our social media. Follow our Spotify
Twitter,
page.
Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
Follow us everywhere.
Rate our podcast.
Newsletter.
MySpace. Everywhere,
MySpace.
Please. I think that's about it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.